How are you, Barry? How are things today?
I'm doing amazing, Colin. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. So listen, we're all saying it. I don't like 17 penalties. I am one of those. I don't care if the defense hits late. I can live with defensive penalties. I really can. In fact, I saw a story this weekend where the teams that do well in college football are generally top 20 in penalties because I think aggressive works. But I am concerned, Barry, when you got 11 of them on offense and you got an offensive coach, that feels sloppy. What's your takeaway?
I'm with you on that. It did look a little sloppy to me. I mean, look, we all know it's the preseason, and we all know, there was a lot of young guys playing out there, a lot of your household names like Dak and Zeke. Those guys really didn't play at all in this game, but 17 penalties is 17 penalties. And to me, that's a little bit worrisome, especially coming from a team last year who led the league in penalties by 11 all of last year. And then you turn around and look at that, playoff game last year against the 49ers. They had 14 penalties in that game as well. So to me, this is a mark of just being an undisciplined team. And when you go towards the regular season, when games really count, I'm not so sure this Cowboys team is good enough to continually overcome, big penalty numbers in a game. So this is something that this coaching staff and these leaders on the team, these players, are going to have to rectify if they want to have a successful season this year.
No, that's a great way to put it. If you have to overcome 100 yards in penalties everywhere, you're facing another team. It's called the officials. So, Micah Parsons is a home run, and the Cowboys, to their credit, have hit some home runs in the draft. He's an interesting player where you could argue, because they lost Randy Gregory, you could put him in a pass rush role. I mean, what do you do with Micah Parsons, who, he's a great linebacker, but this league is about pass rushers. Everybody needs a pass rusher. You lose Randy Gregory. You don't land Von Miller. How would you use Micah?
I would use Micah similar to how Dan Quinn has been using him, in his rookie year, kind of like a chess piece. He's kind of like a defensive weapon. You have him at that, stack linebacker position. You can use his speed, his sideline ability to track down any run game they have out there. He's great in coverage as well. But to me, where he stands out, like you said, is rushing the passer. Whether you have him lined up over the center, over the edge, creating stunts with DeMarcus Lawrence. This guy is all over the field. He's kind of like a defensive weapon. I would kind of have him in that, hybrid linebacker role. Is he the best overall linebacker in the National Football League? I'm not so sure about that, but when you talk about being able to do both, stacked in the second level of the linebacking core and then rushing the passer, I believe he's the best hybrid linebacker in the National Football League and a heck of a weapon for Dan Quinn to use.
Yeah, no, he is special. I want to talk about Trayvon Diggs. So Trayvon, he shut his social media down because he was getting roasted because he had a, listen, man, you could be a great player. You have a bad day at practice. You don't want to go on social media. But I do think there's a narrative out there, Barry, with Trayvon that's fair. Like a Jalen Ramsey, he's a risk taker. The difference is Jalen is probably, Jalen's about as good as we've seen in a decade in terms of playmaking, length, strength. So Trayvon takes big risks, and he gets some scoop and scores. But you've been to camp. You've looked at it. Does he need to scale back on that? Because, man, I'm just going on social media. It wasn't pretty. He had guys getting past him and over the top of him a lot. What do you make of his style?
I would never want to take away, from his gambling ability. To me, I'd rather have a guy out there who gambles. He might give up a couple yards, but at any given moment, that guy can change the game with a pick six or an interception or some type of forced fumble. So I love his gambling mentality when he's out there. I think he needs to, work on his technique a little bit better at the line of scrimmage. I think he lives too much on the dangerous side when you talk about letting receivers get over the top, thinking he can make up speed that way. All the guys in the league are fast nowadays, so he's going to have to work on his technique a little bit, but I would never want to take away, from his gambling mentality out there. That's how he was able to get 11 interceptions and how he was able to be out there and be a game changer for this Dallas Cowboys defense. So to me, stick with that game changing mentality, but just work on the technique just a little bit.
So a couple years ago, I thought Dallas, between Gallup and they drafted CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and Tony Pollard had some juice. And I was like, boy, the league's kind of pivoting to a weapons league. They got some nice weapons. Well, Amari's gone, your best route runner. And Cedric Wilson, who I thought was really underrated, he's gone. So CeeDee's fine. He can move up, but Gallup's off an ACL. I don't know who their three is. Are you a little worried that they could become incredibly dependent on CeeDee Lamb on the perimeter to make plays? A twisted ankle, he's out 3 weeks. They don't have a 1. Does that worry you?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Colin. It's definitely extremely worrisome to me. I'm going into this season, like you said. CD Lamb, he's a bona fide number one. I'm not worried about him. I think he'll go out there and he'll ascend and be a rising star in this league when you talk about the wide receiver room. But overall, I think the Cowboys are depending on a lot of unproven talent. You got a guy like Jalen Tolbert, who they got in the third round, out of South Alabama. They're going to be relying on guys like him. Noah Brown, who's had a handful of catches in this National Football League, and a couple of late round draft picks last year, and undrafted free agents this year. So to me, that room it's kind of scary, and we'll see if Dak Prescott has the ability to go out there and elevate those guys' game out there to get this offense to where it needs to be. But when you're relying on a lot of unproven talent out there, I'm not so sure how many dividends you're going to prove from there. Because right now you got Dalton Schultz as your number 2 tight or your number 2 option behind CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
And Dalton Schultz is a good tight end, but I'm not so sure he's dynamic enough to be your bona fide number 2. So to me, this wide receiver room, this passing attack, it's got some work to do.
All right, Barry Church, he does the Players Lounge Dallas Cowboys podcast. Check it out. Good talking to you. We'll have you on again, and continued success. And way to go. I love seeing guys, undrafted guy, out of the leagues, already in the media, stealing my job. That's what I'd love to see. Barry, continued success.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Colin.